Hello and welcome to another TLDR US video. In this one we're going to be talking about the recent New York Times report into Trump's much sought after tax returns, discussing what's in them, what they say about his financial situation, and how this revelation will affect his re-election campaign. Before we do, if you want to be updated on news stories as they happen, let me recommend the TLDR News Daily Briefing. Every weekday, we release a 4-minute briefing summarising all the latest and most interesting news you might have missed. You can read it on our daily newsletter or read it at tldrnews.co.uk/daily. You can sign up to the newsletter using the link in the description, or you can listen to the daily podcast by searching for TLDR News in your podcast app of choice. Or, if you want to stay right here on YouTube, we have a brand new channel dedicated to the daily briefing, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a video. Anyway, the New York Times seems to have fully gotten a hold of Trump's tax returns. For those of you who've been hiding under a rock, Trump has refused to publish his tax returns since becoming a candidate for president, breaking a convention that dates back to Nixon in the 70s. According to Trump, this is because he's currently under audit by the IRS, but according to Trump's IRS commissioner, Charles Rettig, there's actually no such rule preventing individuals releasing their taxes if they're under audit. As he apparently doesn't have a good reason not to release his tax returns, we've had endless speculation over the last 4 years as to what bad reasons he might have to hide them. There have been theories about Russia, Stormy Daniels, and even Epstein. But it looks like now we might actually know why he was so reluctant to publish his taxes. The New York Times piece, published on Sunday, titled "Long Concealed Records Show Trump's Chronic Losses and Years of Tax Avoidance," claims that Trump's tax returns show, well, as you might have guessed from the title, that Trump isn't in great financial shape and that he doesn't really pay federal taxes. It's worth saying that while the New York Times is a reputable newspaper, and they've double-sourced their information and checked it against the bits of Trump's tax records that are publicly available, they haven't actually published the tax returns. According to the New York Times editorial, this is to keep their source safe. This doesn't mean that the reports aren't trustworthy, neither that Trump nor Trump's lawyers dispute the source material's validity. It just means that we don't have all the information, only what the New York Times described in their article, but they've promised to release more information in the coming weeks. Anyway, on to the substance of the report. So the first thing is that Trump doesn't really pay much tax. In fact, in 11 of the 18 years of tax returns that the New York Times saw, Trump paid $0 in tax. And in 2 of those years, 2016 and 2017, Trump paid just $750 per year in tax, despite the fact that since 2005, Trump has received some $427.4 million from the TV show The APPRENTICE, which he had a 50% stake in, and the various endorsements and celebrity stuff stemming from it, and a further $176.5 million from investments in office buildings. So, how did Trump, on a revenue of about $600 million, pay basically zero federal tax? Well, up until 2004, Trump didn't need to pay any tax because of something that happened way back in 1995. In 1995, Trump reported losses of $915.7 million, which gave him a tax deduction so massive that it lasted nearly 2 decades. Basically, if a businessman loses a lot of money, he can go to the IRS and say, "Hey, look how badly I did this year. There's no way I can afford to pay taxes next year." If he loses 1995 Trump levels of money, he can say, "Hey, look how badly I did this year. There's no way I can afford taxes for the next 2 decades." Anyway, The Apprentice came out in 2004, and this is when Trump started turning a profit. In fact, from 2005 to 2007, Trump made $120 million in profit, according to the New York Times report. Without any remaining tax deductions from his 1995 bust, he had to pay $70 million in federal taxes, $56.9 million in 2005 and 2006, and a further $13.3 million in 2007. This lasted until January 2010, when Trump decided to claim back his $70 million in federal taxes, plus interest, which comes to $72.9 million. To do this, Trump claimed he lost $700 million in 2009. He used a new piece of legislation passed by Obama in November 2009 in the aftermath of the Great Recession, which allowed businessmen to use current losses to claim full refunds for federal taxes paid in the last 4 years, and 50% from the year before that. Previously, businessmen could only use losses to claim tax refunds for taxes paid in the previous 2 years, which would have meant Trump's 2009 losses wouldn't have helped him claw back any of the $56.9 million he paid in federal taxes in 2005 and 2006. Anyway, according to the New York Times article, Trump claimed this massive $700 million loss was incurred because he abandoned his stake in Atlantic City casinos, which were losing money. Abandonment is where you literally just dump your asset. You don't sell it or get anything at all back for it, you just dump it. If you abandon an asset, according to the American tax system, you can claim back losses from previous years on it. So, if Trump abandoned his stake in Atlantic casinos in 2009, he could claim back all the losses he made on it in the years before, which is how he claimed his massive $700 million loss. However, if you get anything back from it at all, even if you just sell it for $1, your claims are limited to $3,000 per previous year. And it seems Trump might have got something back for it, because when the casino bankruptcy concluded, he got 5% of the stock in the new company. When he applied for the tax refund, the IRS issued what's called a quickie refund, where they gave him the money back and said they'd check it later. When they went back and audited it, something didn't seem quite right, so they kept it under audit for a while. No one's quite sure what's holding the audit up, but Trump is still under audit today, and if he's found to have broken the law, he'll have to pay back the $70 million plus interest and penalties, which could come to as much as $100 million. Trump also seems to avoid paying taxes by using a slightly dodgy expense method involving his daughter Ivanka. Basically, for some of the Trump Corporation projects, about 20% of the fees go to consultancy fees, which are tax deductible. However, this seems to basically be going straight to Ivanka. In 2017, when Ivanka joined the White House staff, she had to declare tax records, which included a $747,622 payment from a consulting company she owns called TTT Consulting LLC, which happened to be the exact same amount that the Trump Corporation paid in consultancy fees for projects in Vancouver and Hawaii. Now, this wouldn't be so dodgy were it not for the fact that Ivanka is already a director in the Trump Corporation, which means she's paying herself to consult anyway. He's also charged $70,000 in expenses for haircuts during The Apprentice, which is a bit mad. Finally, Trump seems to have understood the amount of money he made on certain foreign deals. In the annual presidential disclosures, Trump reported that a licensing deal in Istanbul earned him only $3 million. The tax record suggested it was actually $13 million. He also reported that a licensing deal in Manila, in the Philippines, only earned him $4.1 million, when his tax suggests it made him $9.3 million, and that another licensing deal in Azerbaijan only earned him $2.5 million, when, again, his tax suggests it was worth more than $5 million. So, the long and short of it is that Trump pays next to no federal tax, and is currently under audit from the IRS for, let's call it, unorthodox methods of getting around the tax system. In fact, in 2017, he paid $15,598 in tax in Panama, $145,400 in India, and $156,824 in the Philippines. Way more than the $750 he paid that year in the US. The second big finding in the New York Times report was that Trump is not in good financial shape generally. According to his tax returns since 2000, his golf courses have reported losses of $315.6 million. Trump's corporation has reported losses of $134 million, and his Washington hotel reported losses of $55.5 million in 2018. He's failed to pay back $287 million in loans since 2010 and has started personally guaranteeing loans made to his businesses, which is what he did in the 1990s and what caused massive losses of nearly $1 billion. Being president has eased his financial worries though. For example, his Mar-a-Lago resort saw a tenfold increase in membership fees in 2016 once he became president, from $600,000 to $6 million a year. And this allowed him to pay himself 3 times as much as usual in 2016 and 2017. Rental incomes at 40 Wall Street, where Trump owns commercial office space, has risen from $30.5 million in 2014 to $43.2 million in 2018. But, however well it's going, the New York Times report does seem to suggest that most of Trump's businesses are losing money fast, and Trump is personally liable for some pretty serious debts. In total, Trump is liable for $421 million worth of debts, $300 million of which is due in the next 4 years. So, that's what's in the report. Trump doesn't pay much tax and isn't in great financial shape. Predictably, Trump called it all fake news and repeated his audit claim.
We went through the same stories. You could have asked me the same questions 4 years ago. I had to litigate this and talk about it. Totally fake news. Actually, I paid tax. And you'll see that as soon as my tax returns. It's under audit.
While the Democrats expressed their disapproval on Twitter. But will this affect the election at all? Well, the tax avoidance bit probably won't. Hillary Clinton tried to bring this up in 2016, but Trump basically admitted it and even claimed that tax avoidance makes me smart. In fact, in 2016, Trump flat out said he fights hard to pay as little tax as possible. So he essentially admitted it, and he still won. But the fact that he's in dire financial straits might hurt his image as a successful businessman, and the idea of Trump being beholden to anonymous creditors might worry some voters. Perhaps the scariest, though, is that Trump's financial situation makes him even less likely to agree to a peaceful transfer if Biden narrowly wins in November. He's in a serious debt, and the presidency definitely improves his bottom line. Without it, he might be in serious financial trouble, which is going to make him that much more reluctant to give it up. But what do you think? Are you surprised by what's been found in Trump's tax returns? And how do you think it will affect his re-election chances? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified whenever we post a new video. Special thanks to our Patreon backers, who make videos like this one possible. If you want to see your name listed at the end of the videos just like these people, then be sure to back us on Patreon. There's a link to that in the description.